How's your day been? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I just arrived in a rush to be in time, but I made it. Yeah, so I just finished some experiments and I'm
Well,
here.
thank you for making time for this.
No, yeah, thank you for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here.
Thank you. I'm Ivana, by the way. I'm a first year medical student. Uh,
Okay.
we're doing these interviews to kind of shine a spotlight on our J1 scholars and the work you guys are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's kind of what I'm going to be asking you about today. Would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what brought you to USF ultimately?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Yeah, my name is Daniel. I'm originally from Brazil, and I have a bachelor's degree in biomedicine. I think that you have some undergrad courses like here, like biomedical science, that is similar to my course, to my undergrad course, and also my master's degree is in cell biology, and I have a PhD in neuroscience and cognition. My PhD was carried out in Brazil and in Portugal. It was a collaboration between the two countries. And so I did part of my PhD in Brazil and part in the University of Coimbra in Portugal. And also, yeah, and I enjoyed doing neuroscience research since my undergrad. In my first experiments, in like my second year of my undergrad, I did experiments with memory and cannabinoids. So I always liked to understand how the brain works. And during my master's, I worked with ethanol addiction, and during my PhD, I worked with Alzheimer's disease and cannabinoids. And in my postdoc now, I try to keep in the same research field. That's why I came to SF because I found this position that was specifically for working with Alzheimer's disease and metabolism. That it's a thing that I think that it's attracting me very much right now. I think it's very interesting. So the main reason that brought me here it was the research itself.
So you mentioned that it's kind of Alzheimer's and memory research.
Yeah.
Is there anything specifically that led you down that path in your undergrad or your PhD, or was it just something you stumbled upon?
No, like in my undergrad, it's funny because in my undergrad I worked with a cannabinoid that's called anandamide, and I worked with this cannabinoid and with caffeine. I was trying to see if the cannabinoid would impair the memory and if caffeine could act as a protective drug for preventing this impairment of memory. And then in the my master's, I went to another place. I was working with ethanol addiction, but I really liked the memory and cannabinoids, so I wanted to come back to this type of research. And then my PhD, I worked with the same drug that's called anandamide, and but with Alzheimer's disease because I always liked memory, and since Alzheimer's disease is very related to memory, and I think most important than understand the memory is also if you can understand in a way that you can improve the life of people who have memory problems. So I started to not only love memory but also wanted to do something more more applied that work which will be work with Alzheimer's disease. So I searched for an university that worked with Alzheimer's disease, and when I could join memory and Alzheimer's, and so I went to this university in São Paulo, and I worked with Alzheimer's disease and memory. So yeah, there was a whole pathway until I could work with the research that I really liked.
So are you working on a specific project right now to do with Alzheimer's at USF?
Yes, in my PhD, I worked with animal model for Alzheimer's disease that is very related to metabolism because we used a drug that is called streptozotocin, and this drug, if you inject this drug in the brain, the animals will have symptoms similar to Alzheimer's disease. If you inject this drug peripherally, like IP, for example, intraperitoneal, the animals will have diabetes symptoms. So we have this hypothesis that it's known in the scientific world that works with Alzheimer's disease that Alzheimer's disease is the type 3 diabetes. There's a whole metabolic process behind Alzheimer's disease that could explain a lot of the things. So I started to understand this metabolism behind Alzheimer's disease in my PhD, and then I wanted to go deeper in my postdoc, and I found this position that was for a project that was specific for understand the relationship between diabetes and Alzheimer's disease. That's the project that I'm working right now. And I can get into the details of the project, but if it's too specific, you can also just cut out of the conversation. I don't know how detailed I can go. But we are working with, there's a peptide that is also a hormone that's called amylin. And this peptide, besides its physiological functions, it also can be aggregated in the pancreas of diabetic patients, and it's a toxic protein. And on the top of that, we also have in the Alzheimer's disease another protein that can be aggregated in the brain that it's called tau protein. So we have amylin aggregated in the pancreas of diabetic patients, and we have tau protein aggregated in Alzheimer's disease patients. But we also have the opposite. Alzheimer's patients can have aggregated amylin, and diabetic patients can also have tau aggregated. So in this project, we are trying to understand how amylin could affect the aggregation of tau protein. So we have some transgenic animals for Alzheimer's disease, and we are injecting amylin and see how that could affect the aggregation of tau in the brain. That's my project, yeah.
Are you using the methodology from your previous project where you said that you were able to simulate the Alzheimer's symptoms in rats using the drug you spoke of? Are you using that same methodology now?
Yeah, it's also funny because from the beginning, I would not use the same things that I used in Brazil. I would work with a transgenic model for amylin. I would not have to inject anything. But we ended up changing the things, and now I'm working with the same streptozotocin. That is the drug that induces diabetes and Alzheimer's disease. And in my PhD, I work with streptozotocin, aiming to induce Alzheimer's disease. But here we have the transgenic model for Alzheimer's disease. So we are doing the opposite. We are stimulating the development of diabetes in these Alzheimer's disease mice with streptozotocin, trying to see if diabetes can affect this amylin aggregation and tau aggregation in these Alzheimer's disease mice.
That's
So
great. That's very interesting.
yeah, I'm using a lot of the behavior tests and the other things that I used to do in my PhD. I'm using here. So and I'm also learning a lot of advanced techniques which is also great. Yeah.
It sounds like the kind of bringing together of the work you did in Brazil and over here in USF is really helping you make your research progress. How would you say that USF specifically is giving you better techniques or progressing your research more than you could have before?
Yeah, that's great. Here in the USF, I had a great support from all the employees, my supervisor was great since the beginning, since my application process. Everything was very quick and it worked very well for that I could come here. And the lab has a great structure. We have technicians that help us to do the things. And in Brazil, I used to do everything alone. It's not that all the labs, everyone does everything alone, but in my lab, I used to do everything alone. But here we have people that can help. And we have like better equipment. So for example, for the analysis of the brain, I have way more advanced techniques here that allow me to investigate things that I couldn't investigate in my previous lab. So it's like I'm just moving a step further in the research area that I really like it and learning new techniques, and it's been great. Yeah.
That's really good to hear. How
Yeah.
would you say that the pandemic has affected you? Have you been coping well with it?
Yeah, the pandemic affected my work in a way that, for example, I arrived here on late January, beginning of February. So it was a bit before the pandemic, and you don't start your experiments like in the first month because you have to have all the trainings for that you can be able to manipulate mice and all this stuff. So when I would start to do the things, the pandemic came and my experiments were postponed because we could not grow mice and we have to wait until the lockdown was over. So and these mice, they take a long time to be ready, like 6 months maybe. And I had to wait until the mice were ready. But now the experiments are in progress. Everything is going fine. So I was just like delayed. But I think that overall I'm in a privileged position because I was not contaminated yet, and I have my experiments going. And the most hard part, the harder part, is that I didn't meet I didn't know a lot of the city, about the city or the country. I didn't travel. I didn't see these places. But about my research, I don't think that it had a lot of impact. Like I was delayed, but there are most important problems around the world that this. So I think that it's okay. Yeah.
That's good
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah, once you get vaccinated, I can get to know more the country and the other things, but the research is doing great.
Is this your first time visiting Florida?
Yeah, it's the first time. I came to the US in 2016 to a conference. It's the Society for Neuroscience meeting. It's a big conference. But I just stay here for like 10 days, maybe, or a week. So about Florida, it was in California, in San Diego. So here in Florida, I didn't know before. So yeah, hopefully this year I can know better about Florida.
I hope you do too. The Super Bowl should be an interesting experience, even though it's COVID, Super Bowl, but still.
Yeah, yeah. I arrived in the day of Gasparilla party, but I didn't know what was about, and people were crazy about it. I was just in the first week here, so I didn't uh, go or anything. But yeah, there are a lot of things to do here, and besides the research, that it's also very interesting. So hopefully we can do all of this year. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're enjoying yourself here, and it sounds like your lab position is going well. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us interview you, and I think everyone will appreciate getting to hear a bit more about your experience and the project you're working on. It sounds really interesting.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm sorry for my English. I'm still not very confident about it, but we will get better. Yeah.
You sound very fluent. You sound like you have been speaking for a very long time. I didn't
Oh,
even
thank you for that.
think
Thank
about that.
you.